attending this Liberal National Convention are two members of European Parliament, one from Ireland, the other from Germany. Cynthia Mhurchú is from Ireland. Andreas Glück is an MEP from Germany. Hello to the two of you.
Hello to you, and thank you.
So, I think people might be surprised that there are MEPs here gathered in Montreal observing this convention. But the two of you are here because you are part of a grouping in the European Parliament called Renew Europe. And part of that is the belief that Canada is becoming one of the EU's most strategic allies. And I think that quote is actually from you, Cynthia. So I'll get you to start us out. Why do you think that?
Certainly, Canada has the same values, the same liberal values of the Liberal Party that we have in Renew Europe and in many other parties and groups in Europe. And we want more synergy, and we want a bigger and better relationship with Canada, not just for security defence, but for our businesses, for education, for our culture, and also for our tourism. So it's really important, as the old order is now in decline, as PM Carney outlined at Davos in that infamous speech, that we now not only look for new partnerships and forge them, but that we actually actively do it at speed. And Canada is an obvious one for Europe, and in particular for my home country, Ireland, that you mentioned, because our ties go back many, many years.
Absolutely, and there are deep ties with Canada, with Ireland, with Germany. I'm going to pick up on the Davos speech in a moment, but Andreas, I'll get you to jump in here, because when Cynthia talks about building more synergy between Canada and the European Union, well, we already have a comprehensive trade agreement with Europe. I don't know if that's being used to the best advantage quite yet, but can that be the type of building block that you two are exploring when you're here in Canada?
So first of all, we have two reasons to be here. Like, from a liberal perspective, it is to see why and how liberals are so successful in Canada. So this is like the one dimension of our trip. But as you rightly mentioned, the other reason why we are here is because we want to go beyond what we have with our trade agreement CETA. I think this is the beginning of a very wonderful partnership. It's already going back for several years. CETA was a huge step, but now I believe the world changed. And there are not so many partners with the same values we share. And therefore, I believe CETA is only one step on a long, long way, on a long, long journey and a long, long friendship.
Well, certainly that has been talked about ever since Donald Trump has changed, this country's understanding of our trade future. This Prime Minister in particular has been talking about diversifying, increasing trade with other partners, including Europe, with whom we've already signed an agreement. Now, Cynthia, you mentioned Davos, and certainly that speech from Mark Carney got a lot of attention around the world, but is it having any more resonance than that? Because he's calling on middle powers to stand up and to speak more loudly together. Are there willing players in Europe to take up that call?
Absolutely, more than ever. This is a crisis for us as we refine and redefine the world order. And so, therefore, yes, of course, PM Carney's message is finding a great welcome and a great interest in Europe. And it's no wonder that we've had the EU-Canada summit. It's no wonder, from my own perspective in Ireland, that we've had a bilateral between Ireland and Canada, and more to come. And I'm delighted to say that as Ireland leads out as presidency of the European Council from July to December of this year, you can be darn sure that Canada and PM Carney will be front and centre and involved in that. We already have the Coalition of the Willing. We already have PM Carney's commitment to European values. And quite frankly, this is my third visit within 12 months to Canada. And to me, Canada represents the most EU country outside of the EU that I have witnessed. And that is because of the values, it's because of the liberal values, and also the commitment to hard work and a fair wage for a fair day's work, but also looking after communities that might be less well off and people who are less well off. So those values are super important now as we see the rise of the far right throughout Europe and indeed throughout other parts of the world. And we also see a left rising as well. So these polarities are never good. But us liberals, Liberal here, and obviously Renew Europe in Europe, we are in the middle. And what are we? Well, could I describe us, please, as just the workhorses? We are there to try and keep all those interests supported, maintained, but also with a strategic eye on the future.
Andreas, what would you say about the resonance that the Prime Minister Mark Carney's speech had in Davos, but beyond Davos now in Europe?
I mean, of course, Davos was a political speech. And now it is on us, it is like on our people to add flesh to the bone now. So we actually have to fulfill this partnership with real life. So from my perspective, for example, I'm not only an MEP, I'm also a medical doctor. I still work in a hospital. When it comes to medical devices, for example, when it comes to AI, for example, we have to find a third way. We don't want this American way with all the private sensitive data being stored on private company servers, pretty much uncontrolled. But we also don't want to go the Chinese way, for example, that we have it on government servers, like private data on government servers. So we actually see the need to go a third way, and we want to go this way together with Canada. So this is one example of how we can put flesh to the bone.
Andreas is right, and the other way to put flesh on the bone is that CETA agreement that you've mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sorry to say that my country, Ireland, we ran into a constitutional difficulty with regards to a challenge to the CETA agreement, that trade agreement. But countries that have ratified it already in Europe, and it's the vast majority of countries, they're already reaping the rewards and the benefits of CETA. So my government has committed to completing the CETA agreement within the lifetime of this government. And I see my role as an MEP on the EU-Canada delegation, country delegation, and also in my role as a member of the IMCO committee, which is the internal market looking after business and consumers. I see it my responsibility and my role to ensure that CETA is ratified and promoted throughout the rest of the countries, the remaining countries, including Ireland, that is yet to ratify it. Because it's through those trade partnerships that we're going to benefit the citizens that put Andreas in office and myself in office.
Now, I suspect you find this encouraging, but recent polling here in this country indicate that nearly 60% of Canadians either support or are open to joining the European Union. I don't know if you think that is a possibility or how a formalization of a relationship could come about. I wanted to share some thoughts on that.
Well, look, from my perspective, greater brains and greater minds than I will deliberate on that. But I can tell you from the couple of visits that I've had, very enjoyable visits, very productive visits to Canada over the last 12 months, that I understand there will be technical blockages there. But, you know, Canada doesn't have to be a fully fledged, signed-up member of the European Union to actually be in spirit, and by spirit I mean in a working, good, functioning working relationship and synergies. It doesn't have to be a member. I consider Canada already a member. I consider PM Carney a huge ally, a huge friend to Europe and also to other countries, and we want to get that liberal message out there because liberalism is so important now on the stage of politics in order for it to find its voice and not to be drowned out, as I've said already, by the far right and the hard left.
And just to come back to that, I don't see any limitations to this partnership. So we are open for everything. We share the same values, and this is really a wonderful friendship, and it doesn't make any sense to say, okay, we want to be friends, but, you know, only a little bit, and we want to limit it to a certain point. No, it's a friendship, it's a partnership, and of course, no limitations. And one day, if you guys want to join the European Union, let's talk about it.
Okay. Well, I will leave it at that. I will say if you're going to visit Canada again, it's lovely in the summer. Cynthia, Andreas, thank you for that.
Lovely. Every season is lovely.
Thank you.
I did a lot of skiing in Canada. It's also lovely in winter.
There we go. It's true. I do a lot of skating. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.